Today on The Conservative Rebel, power-hungry leftist judges are illegally trying to seize power from President Trump to stop him from implementing his agenda. This time, they've ruled that Trump needs to rehire thousands of useless bureaucrats fired by Doge. This is an attack on the very foundations of our constitutional order. America is supposed to be ruled by the people, not by unelected oracles in flowing black robes. Meanwhile, Trump makes a major blunder by calling for Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie to be primaried. Congress is filled with pathetic, spineless traitors, but instead of targeting them, Trump's attacking one of the only principled conservatives we have. It backfired spectacularly, as you would expect. And finally, the Trump administration has a new proposal. Abolish the income tax for Americans making less than $150,000 a year. What happened to ending it for everyone? Why should your rights be based on how much money you make? We'll talk about all of it today on The Conservative Rebel. Ever since Trump took office 2 months ago, the left-wing media has been claiming that America could soon face a constitutional crisis, which is a term they've been throwing around a lot. They want you to think that Trump is wildly abusing his executive power by firing useless bureaucrats, or by cracking down on the invasion of the southern border, or by fighting corruption at USAID or any other federal agency. They claim he's violating the separation of powers and overstepping his bounds, and this, they insist, could lead to disaster. They're wrong on all counts, except for this. It's true that America's facing a constitutional crisis. But it's not a crisis that's being caused by President Trump. It's a crisis that's being caused by federal judges. Now, we're supposed to believe that judges are the be-all, end-all of all constitutional questions. If a judge says the president can't do something, that's it. But when you look at what the founders actually had to say about it, you'll learn that that's all a lie. Thomas Jefferson, for one, never had anything nice to say about federal judges. Here's what he had to say about it. Quote, "The germ of dissolution of our federal government is in the federal judiciary, an irresponsible body, for impeachment is scarcely a scarecrow, working like gravity by night and by day, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless steps like a thief over the field of jurisdiction, until all government, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as the center of power, which will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." What Jefferson was getting at was that since a lot of judges face no elections and never really face impeachment, they have almost zero accountability for their actions. The other branches of government all check each other. The Congress can impeach the president can veto bills passed by Congress. But the way the Constitution has been interpreted for most of American history, no one can really check the power of the courts. Of course, that's a wrong interpretation, but it's how things have been done for quite some time. Jefferson's political enemies laughed at him, but since then his fear of the tyranny of judges has been more than vindicated. Just look at what left-wing judges across the country have been doing to Trump since he took office 2 months ago. These partisan hacks have stopped his common-sense executive order on birthright citizenship. They've forced him to spend billions of dollars on foreign aid he tried to cut, and in general they've constantly been harassing his administration every time it tries to cut spending or fire lazy, entitled government employees. But the most egregious example of all happened this week, when a federal judge ruled Trump has to rehire useless bureaucrats and allow them to continue to sponge off taxpayer dollars after he fired them. Here's the headline from Politico. Quote, "Thousands of federal workers must be rehired immediately, judge rules." A federal judge on Thursday ordered federal agencies to rehire tens of thousands of probationary employees who were fired amid President Donald Trump's turbulent effort to drastically shrink the federal bureaucracy. U.S. District Judge William Alsup described the mass firings as a, quote, sham strategy to sidestep legal requirements for reducing the federal workforce. Alsup, a San Francisco-based appointee of President Bill Clinton, which of course he's from San Francisco, it's essentially Sodom, Gomorrah, and Nineveh rolled into one, ordered the Defense, Treasury, Energy, Interior, Agriculture, and Veterans Affairs departments to, quote, immediately offer all fired probationary employees their jobs back. This far-left judge from San Francisco, in one ruling, is trying to seize the executive power from Trump and snatch it up for himself. If the president can't even fire lazy bureaucrats, many of whom don't even show up to work, by the way, he can't do anything meaningful at all. The president becomes this useless, powerless, castrated figurehead, and the real rulers of the country become the bureaucrats and federal judges like this one, instead of the people. By trying to seize the power of hiring and firing from Trump, this leftist hack is trying to seize power from the people. He's trying to seize power from you. The president is supposed to represent the whole American people who elect him through the Electoral College. So make no mistake, this is an attack on the very foundations of our republic. This judge is taking a flamethrower to the principles of our Constitution. America is supposed to be ruled by the people of the states, not by unelected oracles in flowing black robes. Article 2 of the Constitution says this, quote, "The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America." In case you didn't catch that, it said a president, singular. It doesn't say the executive power shall be vested in the bureaucrats of the United States or the federal judges of the United States. It says the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. So here's a little civics lesson for His Worship the Judge from San Francisco. The United States has 3 branches of government: legislative, which is Congress, which makes laws; executive, which is the president, who enforces laws; and judicial, which are the courts, which are supposed to interpret the Constitution and make sure the other branches don't do anything unconstitutional. These bureaucracies, USAID, the Energy Department, the Agriculture Department, all of these, they're not mentioned in the Constitution. They form an unconstitutional 4th branch of government, the bureaucracy. But since a 4th branch is unconstitutional, all of these, to be legal, had to be technically classified as part of the 3 real branches of government. So guess what they're classified as? Executive agencies. As we just read in the Constitution, the president is the chief executive. He has the executive power, which means that he is in charge of all of these bureaucracies. He's in charge of the bureaucrats. He's their boss. And guess what that means, your high mightiness? He can fire any or all of them anytime he wants. He could abolish any one of these agencies with the stroke of a pen. Because the president is elected by the people, and these bureaucrats are not, this judge has in effect ruled that the people are subordinate to the bureaucrats. He has ruled that America is an oligarchy, not a republic. He is attacking the foundations of constitutional government in the United States, and so is every judge who has ruled that Trump can't fire these people. So yes, there is a constitutional crisis in America, but it's the activist judges like this one who have caused it. And for the sake of our republic, Trump's reaction should be the same as Andrew Jackson's was when the Supreme Court overstepped its bounds in 1832. The judge has issued his ruling. Now, let him enforce it. Alright, moving on to our next topic. I've been very supportive of a lot of the things President Trump has done since he took office, and anyone who has listened to the conservative rebel in the past knows that's true. But this week, Trump made a major catastrophic blunder, unfortunately, and I can't ignore it. And that blunder is this. On Truth Social, Trump called for Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie to be primaried. For those of you who aren't familiar with Massie, he is without question the most consistent conservative member of the United States Congress. Most Republican politicians are corrupt, backstabbing traitors who shower voters with promises to cut spending, cut government, and put America first, but they end up doing the opposite. They increase spending, they expand government, they ship off your tax dollars to Ukraine, to Israel, to regimes all across the world, to fund wars that are none of our business and meddle in the politics of foreign countries. They either do that because they profit off of it and they deliberately lie to the people, or they did mean what they said genuinely, but then they end up being too cowardly to do anything about it and they just want to compromise. That's what most Republicans in Congress do. They form an elitist uniparty with the Democrats that supports endless spending, endless wars, and the destruction of liberty. Thomas Massie is one of the few who doesn't play that game. He opposes the spending, he opposes the wars, he opposes the never-ending encroachments on our constitutional rights. It doesn't matter if a bill is proposed by Democrats or Republicans. If it's unconstitutional, Massie won't vote for it. So naturally, he was the only Republican to oppose the latest spending bill, which unfortunately passed, because it doesn't cut spending. Pretty simple. But for whatever reason, Massie's very predictable opposition to this spending bill, which anyone who knows about his voting record saw coming, just set Trump off. The Hill has this, quote, President Trump is vowing to, quote, lead the charge to unseat Republican Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who has said he will not support the GOP's short-term government funding bill ahead of Friday's shutdown deadline. Trump began a Truth Social post late Monday night by thanking the House Freedom Caucus for backing the stopgap funding package and supporting Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana's efforts to keep the government open, and then called for Massie to be primaried. And here's Trump's post, quote, Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allowed millions of criminals to invade our nation. Sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Congressman Thomas Massie of beautiful Kentucky is an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact that he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He voted for one continuing resolution that would have cut spending by 8% because he votes for cutting spending. This one doesn't cut spending. That's why he opposed it. There's no inconsistency there. But it went on. He should be primaried, and I will lead the charge against him. He's just another grandstander who's too much trouble and not worth the fight. He reminds me of Liz Cheney before her historic, record-breaking loss. The people of Kentucky won't stand for it. Just watch. Do I have any takers? Now, this was obviously a serious blunder on Trump's part, and I'll explain why. As we just talked about, most Republicans in Congress are either backstabbers who promise to cut spending and then don't because of their own political interests, or they're just malleable cowards who are putty in the hands of the left. People who constantly try to compromise and find a middle ground and are afraid to ever stand up for anything or take any political risks. You know who I'm talking about, the Lindsey Grahams and Lisa Murkowskis and Dan Crenshaws of the world. Why isn't Trump calling to primary these losers? Why doesn't he go after them? Lindsey Graham and 25 other rhino losers just voted against Trump's foreign aid cuts. Rand Paul forced a vote on it. You know how Doge cut a bunch of foreign aid? He forced the Senate to vote on it. 25 of them voted against it. How about you go after those people? I don't care if you agree with Thomas Massie on this spending bill or not, or on aid to Israel or whatever other issue. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of Republicans who are openly hostile to the America First agenda. There are dozens and dozens of them who have worked with the Democrats to destroy this country for the past 4 years. Where are your priorities? Shouldn't we deal with them before we deal with one who you think is too conservative? But you'll hear a lot of Republicans say dumb, popular things like, oh, Massie is just looking for attention. We need to unite to defeat the liberals. We need to compromise every now and then. Just regurgitating the Fox News establishment talking points. Listen to yourself. Which do you think is a bigger threat to this country? People like Lindsey Graham, who never saw a war they didn't like, who spend money like drunken sailors, who are bought and paid for by lobbyists, or people like Thomas Massie? Do you think the problem with the Republican Party is that it's too consistent, too principled, that it doesn't compromise with the radical left enough? Really? Is that what you think? You think the problem with the Republican Party is that it's too reluctant to waste your money? You think the problem with America is that Congress doesn't spend enough money? That's what you have to think in order for primarying Massie to make any kind of sense. As Massie himself has pointed out, every time there's a new opportunity to cut spending, Mike Johnson and the loser faction of the Republican Party will just say, oh, we'll compromise now and fight next time. But next time never comes. Massie recently put this out on X. This is true. Quote, the argument for CR, which is an abbreviation for continuing resolution, which is how they're spending money, in September 2024, was to fight in December 2024 after the election. The argument for CR in December 2024 was to fight in March 2025 after the inauguration. The argument for CR in March 2025 is to fight in September 2025 because we're not ready yet. What he's getting at is we control the Supreme Court. We control the House. We control the Senate. We control the presidency. If we don't fight now, we'll never fight. We have united government. Republicans control everything right now, okay? Everything. Now is the time to fight. This is the golden opportunity. This is the moment that we strike. Because there will not be a next time. This is the golden window of opportunity to actually save America, providentially given to us, a golden opportunity, and we're just throwing it away. It's insane. And it's especially bizarre how in his post, Trump compared Massie to Liz Cheney. He compared someone who is literally on the staff of the libertarian Ron Paul Institute to a woman who is one of the most hawkish neocons in Congress. They're polar opposites. They could not be more different. I'm glad you brought up Liz Cheney, because look at how she was primaried. That should be the model for how you deal with rhinos. So how about we give Lindsey Graham or someone like him the Liz Cheney treatment instead of attacking Massie? And already this has backfired spectacularly for Trump. In just the past few days since this all happened, Massie has raised almost $350,000 from thousands of small donations. And every time people have targeted Massie, they've failed. For 3 consecutive elections, he has faced opposition from people who are running to the left of him, people who claim that he's too much of a firebrand or a radical. For the past 3 election cycles, that's what he's faced. Last year, AIPAC, which is a lobbying group that pays congressmen money to ensure they'll continually vote to send money to Israel, pumped tons of money into Massie's district to try to defeat him in the primary, because he votes against all foreign aid, including to Israel. But Massie ended up crushing his opponents. So the people of Massie's district love him. Whoever runs against Massie will inevitably lose. So Trump can't win in this. He can't win. There's no way for him to win. He has nothing to gain by calling for Massie to be primaried. All it does is make him look bad, which is unfortunate, because I think Trump is the best president we have had for the past 100 years. Now, that's a very low bar, obviously, but still, I really like a lot of what Trump did, and it really upsets me to see him make blunders as dumb as this. Alright, moving on to our final topic. A few weeks ago, we discussed why the income tax needs to be abolished, primarily because it's, of course, morally evil, but also because it does terrible harm to the economy. Trump and his Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had both repeatedly hinted that the administration might push to finally free us from this North Korean tax system. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the administration has retreated from its original position and has come up with a new tax proposal. Let's see what it is. Newsweek reports, President Trump has proposed a plan to abolish federal income taxes for Americans earning less than $150,000 per year. Trump has proposed numerous tax plans, such as no taxes on tips or overtime, no taxes on Social Security payments, and the one I like, which is no federal income tax at all. The federal income tax proposal would remove taxes for people earning less than $150,000 per year, and would impact the vast majority of Americans. In 2022, around 93% of Americans aged 15 and over earned less than $150,000, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. If Trump's plan is enacted, Americans would still pay taxes at the state and local level, as well as Social Security and Medicare. However, their take-home pay would increase if federal income tax was removed. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is that the income tax is evil in any and all circumstances. I won't spend very long saying that. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but we discussed that it's morally wrong for the government to enslave anyone by forcing him to work half the year just to make the money the government will steal from him. That will never change, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much money you make, no matter who you are or where you are in life. It's wrong for anyone to do that for you. It's wrong for anyone to take half your income, especially your own government, when its purpose, we're told, is to protect your rights. Your inalienable, God-given right to property doesn't go away the second your income exceeds a certain amount. You think that's how it works? You think you were created with an inalienable right to property, but when you make $150,000 a year, that right suddenly magically disappears? If you make $149,999 a year, you're protected. But the second you make just $1 more than that, your right to your own property somehow vanishes. Because that's what you have to think for this proposal to make any kind of sense. You have to think that some people have rights that others don't. You have to think some people are more equal than others. And what's more, you're basing that on how much money someone makes. So it violates the principle of equal justice. Now, of course, you can't really criticize Trump for that because our current income tax system is already a far more egregious violation of equal justice. We already have this ludicrous illegal system where different people have to pay different tax rates. Some pay 10%, but others have to pay 4 times that, which is morally insane. We already have that illegal system going on that violates equal justice. But one of the things that I really liked about abolishing the income tax altogether was that that went away. That the government was no longer just arbitrarily deciding based on how much money you had to make, that you would be forced to surrender X arbitrary percent of your income to them. That went away. Everything would be equal if we abolished the income tax. So if we're going to keep the income tax, it would make more sense for it to be a flat tax, which is the only constitutional thing to do. The Constitution does have the 16th Amendment, which is a disastrous amendment. I hate it so much. It never should have been approved, which gives the federal government the authority to collect an income tax. But it doesn't give it the authority to collect a progressive income tax. And we have other places in the Constitution where it says that all laws need to be made for the general welfare of the Union, which means they have to benefit everyone in the Union equally, kind of. They have to benefit the states equally. So we may have this system where the income tax is justified by the 16th Amendment, but this progressive income tax system isn't, and this new proposal that Trump has, while it's certainly better than what we currently have, it would still be a great thing if this was enacted, don't get me wrong, it still would not be in the general welfare. There would be some people who would benefit from it and some people who would not. It would be the government choosing who would win and the government choosing who would lose. So if we're going to have any income tax at all, which we shouldn't, obviously, it should be a flat tax. And that would be fair, and that would make sense, and that would be constitutional. But I understand that Trump and most people are not coming from it that way. They do not believe that the income tax is the moral evil that I think it is. They think that it's just this inconvenient thing that is harmful for economic growth. So if you're coming at it from that angle, this is a great way to score political points, because you always hear the socialists and communists whining about how the rich allegedly don't pay their fair share and all this stupid stuff about billionaires allegedly paying less than firefighters and policemen or whatever, when in reality policemen pay like 12-22%, I don't know exactly what it is, but the billionaires pay 40%, so that's obviously wrong. But this system obviously would lift the income tax on the lower class and the middle class, but it would just be the upper class who would have to pay taxes. So it's a very populistic thing that a lot of people will like, because it looks like something that's helping the little guy, but still making the rich bear the cost of the government. The problem is, though, that the people who make all of the jobs that the middle class uses, they hire all these middle-class workers, the ones who build the factories, the ones who create the stores that people work in. If you're taxing them, then they have less money to invest into their business, to grow their business, which means they have less money to hire middle-class workers. So by taxing the rich, you are actually killing lots of good, high-paying jobs for middle-class workers. Now, this proposal would not raise taxes on the rich any more than it already does. But what I'm saying is that it doesn't make economic sense any more than it makes moral sense to tax the rich but not to tax the middle class. So don't get me wrong, this would be a step in the right direction. I would be happy if this was passed. It would be far better than our current tax system. I'm not someone who's all or nothing on this issue, where I'm either gonna have the income tax totally abolished or I won't accept anything else. This would be a step in the right direction and I'd be happy about it. But it would only be a step in the right direction. We need to continue working to free America from this oppressive North Korean tax system because it is morally evil. It's like crime. It's good when politicians reduce crime. It's good when the criminals are locked up and the murder rate goes down. But we can never stop fighting it because it is evil. We can never give up until it disappears altogether. And maybe the income tax will never disappear, but we need to understand that it is morally wrong and that the goal must be to abolish the income tax for everyone. And that once we do that, we can finally begin to restore freedom and prosperity to America. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Conservative Rebel. Please subscribe to our podcast, leave a like, and share. I'll see you on the next episode.